This is the Run Pod Option. I'm Marty.
I'm Kyle.
Jeff.
Follow us on Twitter at RunPodOption or email us runpodoption@gmail.com. We are your second favorite college football podcast.
Not the first.
Who's number one?
Definitely not the third either.
Listen, there's a lot out there, and we suggest you try everybody out. But frankly, sometimes you just need simple, good fun with a little bit of analytics, a little bit of deep talk here. Inevitably talking about why Chip Kelly doesn't have it anymore. It's just time is a flat circle with us. So let's get started. LSU defeats Auburn 23-20. LSU's hardest test yet.
Hey, they got the win. Joe Burrow's doing his thing.
Joe Burrow and Edwards-Helaire running the ball both had a really good game against an incredibly tough defense. Jeff, have you seen Auburn play other than the Oregon game up to this point?
I watched them in a couple weeks after, and it's been against teams, I think Arkansas and another. So I haven't seen them really match up against another premier team like they did against LSU.
Arkansas is a fake team.
Arkansas really is a fake team. That's great analysis, Kyle. Like truly. So Auburn, you'll hear all season, Auburn's probably got the best four up front on defense. And all around, it was very clear very early on that, yes, Bo Nix was a freshman, and also that the offense really, really gets carried by the defense. It was nice to see LSU not get away from the pass, really. Like they ran the ball, but Joe Burrow was still incredibly accurate. He was still really, really good. And I have two interesting facts coming out of this game. One, Ed Orgeron is 7-1 in his last 8 games against top 10 opponents.
Really?
Did you ever think that the Cookie Monster would go on a run like that?
No.
Insane.
I remember a couple of years ago where people are like, we need to fire him. Get rid of him.
I think it was easy to say that, though, because you don't see him in the locker room, I guess. And I'm sure there's plenty of interviews back out there, with like reporters doing on-site stuff, and they talk about how good he is with the team, how much everybody loves him. But the way he talks, and this is not to just be rude about the way he sounds or anything else like that, even going back to the Cookie Monster comment.
But, it sounds like you really hate his voice.
I mean, no, I love it, honestly, because it is proof that there are characters out there who can sound like that and still get to like the pinnacle of their respective industry. In this case, I think he's a great coach.
Boy, you're saying is the pinnacle of that industry is PBS for him because he's the Cookie Monster.
Yeah, it's Sesame Street. If they get a chance to go to the Rose Bowl, they're going to make sure there's a Sesame Street Cookie Monster float going through for the parade.
And the sponsor for the bowl will now be the letter R.
The second note I had was a day after this. You know what? Actually, it might have been today. LSU got a wide receiver commit, and his first name is DE apostrophe coldest. He's the coldest. And I saw Bomani Jones tweet about it, saying you're really taking a chance naming your kid something like that, and being a top tier Division I recruit is probably the right step in that direction. But God, I want him to be good, and I hope they still have the same offense as he's going through school, because the coldest is honestly maybe one of the coolest, no pun, one of the coolest names for a wide receiver out there.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, yeah.
It's better than DeAnthony, I think.
The coldest.
It's better than Odell.
What about Jarvis?
Jarvis
is tough to beat, but I don't know if Jarvis is like he overcame such a bad name or he made a name cool, whichever one it is. Not totally sure.
What about Dwayne Bowe? Can we talk about Dwayne Bowe?
Dwayne Bowe.
Whatever happened to Dwayne Bowe?
I don't know what. I mean, he went to Kansas City, right? Like right after. That's where he got drafted.
Yeah, but he was like ugly Kansas City, like not fun Kansas City.
Who was Kansas City's quarterback during that run?
Was it
Smith.
early Alex Smith?
Yeah.
And before that, was it like oh god, who was before that?
Was it? Oh my goodness gracious! He was an Alabama quarterback. Brody Croyle. What is that? Does that name sound familiar?
Oh god. Oh no, I don't want to hear that name ever again.
Yeah, let's move on. So,
Bloody Croyle.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts and the Oklahoma Sooners travel to Manhattan, Kansas, where dreams go to die, and Kansas State wins 48-41.
And Oklahoma's dreams went to die.
Well, what it does do is it puts Baylor in the driver's seat for the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Did either of y'all get a chance to watch this game?
The second half of it, which was awesome.
Man, the second half was wild.
I caught what I could of it, and it was fun.
Kansas State at one point had 8 straight drives that they scored on, 2 field goals, 6 touchdowns, which is an incredible rate. Jalen Hurts didn't even necessarily have a bad game, but it was the fourth quarter that did it. And for as much credit as we give, and I think the nation gives Lincoln Riley for being probably the best play caller in America, I don't know what he was doing. Like doing the pitch, wide receiver throw, when the guy had 10 yards in front of him that he could have gotten, the whole thing looked like a mess. From about the second quarter on, it felt like Kansas State was in the driver's seat pretty much the entire time, minus that Oklahoma comeback.
Well, here's the other thing, though. Like, that defense I thought was better this year. I think I had heard where it was like round 30 in the country. Where was that? Kansas State is not a dynamic offense.
They don't have to be, though. I think what they did is not too different than what we saw Army do to Michigan this year and what Army did to Oklahoma last year. And Skylar Thompson, their quarterback, just like it felt like they never adjusted for him at any point.
It felt like a perfect storm.
It was. I mean, Marty, you could probably speak to the first half more, but Kyle, you talked about Oklahoma's defense. I mean, they just like totally regressed. Like Skylar Thompson, like
that's who we're going to give up 4 touchdowns
to. Yeah, I mean, he was making like beautiful throws. When I turned it on, he was just like slinging it, which was crazy too. Because he's not. I mean, he's a decent quarterback, but he's only averaging like 170 yards a game. He's not chucking the ball over the field. So
the best thing that Kleiman and Kansas State did was, first of all, Oklahoma didn't get pressure on Skylar almost ever, it felt like. And whether that was the protection schemes that Kansas State was using, or if that was a matter of just kind of play design, where you had 3 running backs in the backfield and all the linebackers kind of crowded up, and one it's a counter to the outside, and he's got 2 running backs blocking for him and a wide receiver, and I think the tight end might have been on that spot. Like it just the off balance formations they were using, Oklahoma didn't adjust, and Oklahoma didn't wrap up like they wrapped up against a lot of other teams this year. And Kansas State is going to Kansas State. You know, Bill Snyder would do this. It's not surprising that it was Kansas State. It's surprising that it happened in the way it did, which was them scoring 48 points.
Yeah. I mean, did you really think that they were going to set up 48 points on them? I mean, that's crazy.
No, because I never thought they were that dynamic of an offense. They haven't shown themselves to be. And I don't know if that's a credit of, again, that staff just doing simple, like the keep it simple, stupid bit. That's really what it felt like. It didn't feel like they were doing anything crazy. They were just going to play their game. And I think it's probably the first time Oklahoma's faced maybe that strong of a running attack. And we see kind of what happened. I'm sure that Grinch is going to do his best to adjust down the road, but you bet your ass that Baylor's going to be doing the same thing. Their offense looks very similar. Another offense that looks really similar is Iowa State, who lost to Oklahoma State. We'll keep it really short. Brock Purdy threw it 62 times. He threw 3 interceptions, all in the fourth quarter. And I wanted to wrap it up with the Big 12 mostly, because we have Baylor in first, which we all saw coming. We have Oklahoma now in second. And then the fight for third is between Iowa State, Texas, Kansas State, TCU, and Oklahoma State, who are all within a game of each other. And it's going to make these last few weeks really, really fun. And they're not the only conference. There's a lot of conferences that are going to have a really tight, fun race down the road.
No, I'm here for it.
Jeff, can you tell me whether or not Brian Kelly adjusted for the rain?
But I can tell you that Brian Kelly killed a kid once, so.
Oh my God.
Do tell.
Did you also see that tweet that says Brian Kelly just wants to put a kid up in the sky cam for this during this rainstorm?
Terrible. I'm sorry. No, and I think you called it out and a couple other people. I didn't watch. When did they play NC State in a hurricane? Because people kept referencing that during the game. Was it last year or a few years ago?
No, it was 2016, and it was at North Carolina State, and it was Deshaun Kaiser throwing 26 times.
It's one of the strangest things I've seen. I know Ian Book has been, from what I understand, he was a top 5 passer in efficiency rating last year. So I kind of understand where they were going. They knew they had some advantages in the passing game against Michigan, but I don't know if you guys saw the game. It was literally raining sideways from the onset, and trying to throw it that many times when your quarterback is already under pressure and kind of get a little trigger happy was not the smartest thing. And credit to Michigan because they shut down Notre Dame's running game early. But yeah, it was. I was not expecting the final result to be what it was.
It truly felt like I watched probably 2 whole quarters throughout the game, just on and off, because it was on a second or third screen for me. And it felt like a team playing another team, one team having adjusted for the weather and the other team not at all. And what Haskins and Charbonnet and Wilson were all able to do out of that backfield was, A, I thought Notre Dame's defense is better than that. But B, even with those conditions, it's not like it's incredibly easy to read either. They just felt like they were blowing Notre Dame off the ball regularly.
I mean, they ended up running for, I think, over 300 yards, which is pretty crazy. And that was Notre Dame's defense is not elite, but I want to say they're like top 20, top 30. So they have a lot of NFL players. They're a good defense. I'm not sure they even got off the bus. Like, you could tell from the first snap, Michigan blew them off the ball, and it was like, okay, it's going to be, that kind of game. So reading the
this is the Michigan that we thought we were going to see.
It really is.
Like all year.
Yeah, Michigan in the last 5 quarters just looked fantastic.
But it just begs the question, like, I was reading some hilarious Notre Dame message boards yesterday.
Noted message board enthusiast Jeff.
They're really not happy with Kelly, and he's 58 years old. I think he still has, I don't know where he is in his contract, but they're under the impression that he's going to be locked in. Like, what do you guys think what their future is with him?
I think their future with him is, middling seasons of, I can't believe I'm saying this is middling, but 9-3, 10-2, not making the tournament, being there, just kind of a team playing their ridiculous independent schedule, and that's it.
I think that what Kyle hit on there is the biggest disconnect for me. So we'll say, and we'll talk about, it's great for a college football when so-and-so is good or competitive. And we've had now a competitive Notre Dame for a long time, but just not competitive enough to be in the national title scene except for last year. And then they got absolutely dunked on by Clemson. And the disconnect for me comes down to them being an independent. Like, I simply just don't care. And I don't care that they can have a poor year one year, and if they decide to, have a schedule that is just incredibly weak and go undefeated. Like, that bums me out. It bums me out more than Clemson not having a legit number 2 contender in the ACC. Because at least those teams are trying, but when you get a chance and you can choose to schedule Ball State, and it's not just one of 4, it's one of 12 that you can schedule at that level. I'm kind of, I feel for Brian Kelly, but I also think he's also like a bad person. Truly, I don't think he's a good person. And I don't think he's a good coach to play for based off what I've read just a little bit from former players.
You're also starting to touch a little bit on my theory on Notre Dame and how they're kind of like the conference destructor, where they did this to the Big East, where they brought their other programs in to play every other sport, but didn't bring the football team in. They reaped the benefits of having their basketball team, their women's basketball team, their volleyball team, teams like that in there, but never helped out the conference, and because of it, the Big East died as a football conference. Now we're doing it again in the ACC, where they've got their basketball, lacrosse, women's basketball, teams like that in the ACC. Yes, they made a little bit of a contingency with the football program where they have to play, I think, 5 games a year against ACC teams, but they're not actually in the conference.
Well, lucky them, because it's also the ACC.
Yeah, but they could have been the number 2 team in the ACC.
Oh yeah, I think hands down, agreed. And instead, the ACC gets to flounder, and Notre Dame doesn't get undefeated, and thankfully suffer their second loss, so we don't have to worry about them getting in the playoffs this year. Not
this year, but next year when they're 10-1 and have wonderful wins over Duke and
they won't get a chance to
terrible Stanford team.
They won't get a chance to play Michigan again until I think that. How many years is it, Jeff?
That's 2033.
So 13 years. So Kyle's going to be close to 50. I'll be around 48-ish. Or no, that's not the right math at all. I'll be 45. Either way.
What? No.
I'll be 46. I'm 33 now. It's going to be 13 years. Yeah, but you're on the old side of it, though. Like, I just turned.
That doesn't equal 4 years.
Is that Benjamin Button? Reverse Benjamin Button?
Yeah, I'm going to hit pause because I'm going to lie about my age for a few years. That's what Kyle hasn't adjusted for.
Oh, okay. Sure, you're going to be 36.
So, Kyle, I know you were limited in some of the games you were able to watch because you were at an all-important family reunion.
Ah, yes.
So, when is it time to question whether Dino Babers is the right guy or not?
Not yet. I mean, you're replacing you're replacing a quarterback right now in Eric Dungy, who was a gamer. Let's face it. He was a senior. He was a winner. Tough to replace a guy like that. He could have willed this team to win against an NC State or Pittsburgh, but they don't have that with DeVito because DeVito's a sophomore. He's also getting killed back there. Plays where Dungy would have extended it with his feet. That's not happening right now because DeVito's not that kind of quarterback. Now we have an offensive line that's terrible.
Did Dungy mask maybe how bad that offensive line was last year with his ability?
No, they lost a lot of people off that offensive line too. Like they replaced I think 4 people off that offensive line.
Well, Florida State's pretty close. They're on the road to being bowl eligible. Syracuse gets to watch from home, but I do hope that they bounce back, if nothing else, because Dino Babers is the opposite of Brian Kelly. A very good guy.
He's fun.
He's got the RPO seal of approval.
He's not Brian Kelly. That's what a high bar.
What Brian Kelly did at Cincinnati was truly great. Don't discount his Cincinnati run.
Nothing that ever happens in Ohio counts.
Well, that's probably a good thing for Wisconsin then, because Ohio State just absolutely destroyed them. I'll be honest, I only tuned back in the second half because I heard what Chase Young was doing, and I want to kind of focus on this, if you will, Jeff. So Jonathan Taylor had an awful game. J.K. Dobbins had a great game. Chase Young, I don't even have a comp for him because he was so insanely good against Wisconsin, and he's been so insanely good all year.
So the crazy thing is I don't know if you guys ever watched either of the Bosa brothers play, but there were 2 Bosa brothers at Ohio State, and then Chase Young was like 4th string, which is insane. I think he's on pace for, they said 23 sacks this year if he continues. He's a monster. I mean, he's got Larry Johnson coaching him. Larry Johnson is the longtime Penn State defensive line coach. It's been at Ohio State. So
You mean the old power forward for the Carolina or for the Charlotte Hornets?
You mean the former running back for the Kansas City Chiefs?
they might be related.
Grandmama?
Yeah, I mean Chase Young is an absolute machine, and Wisconsin didn't do itself any favors. They, have a pretty good offensive line, I would say, but they kept trying to like chip Chase Young with a tight end, and he would just get destroyed too. So it didn't go too well.
I saw it every which way. I saw them trying to chip him. I saw them trying to double team him. I saw them try to chip, followed by a double team. And every single time, it felt like Chase Young was that like 220-pound peewee football player that was just flying through people. Wisconsin didn't have a chance at stopping him.
Oh. And the crazy thing about Ohio State is, J.K. Dobbins has been really good for 3 years. You guys know that. Chase Young is looking like a near Heisman candidate, and then Justin Fields is now like rounding into form. It's ridiculous. I mean, what team has a 5-star transfer in and become even better than he was? Of course, Ohio State does. So I'm not salty, but I'm salty.
They truly are insane, and I don't know if people weren't buying on them because it's not Urban Meyer and it's still Ryan Day's first full year. But the one thing that feels different is Ohio State just doesn't let up, and they're so incredibly talented. I don't know what it looks like or what a team has to do, and maybe Michigan's defense can kind of show us maybe how to slow down the Dobbins and the Fields of the world.
I don't trust Harbaugh enough.
I don't trust Shea to be able to get rid of the ball with Chase Young coming down on him either.
No.
They're almost going to have to run it for 300 yards, I feel like, for them to have a chance.
I mean, but you saw Ohio State played extremely well against Wisconsin's front five, and I mean Taylor was shut down. Like he did nothing. So yeah, they're crazy good this year. They're a legitimate title contender.
Yeah, he finished with 52 yards on 20 carries. And now we've got a Big Ten West where Minnesota is in complete control of their own destiny. Minnesota has Iowa, Wisconsin, and Penn State left, which are not all easy games despite Wisconsin showing here. And Wisconsin still has Iowa and Minnesota kind of as their only two big tests. But it's going to be interesting. I do feel bad if Minnesota decides to win the Big Ten West, just what Ohio State's going to do to them.
Be a bloodbath.
You know what? If it's not, then I am all in on PJ Fleck, dude. If PJ Fleck can get to the Big Ten title game and play Ohio State, and God forbid Ohio State loses to Michigan, so now they know they have to just absolutely sacrifice Minnesota to get in the playoff. If Minnesota can keep it within 24 points, PJ Fleck deserves Coach of the Year in that conference, hands down.
Well, this is a question that has come up. If Minnesota does well, you guys, like you're talking about, maybe they win 10 games. Does a bigger school come after him? Because Minnesota's going to pony up some money to try to keep him. Like, do you think someone else bigger comes after him?
I think PJ Fleck knew. I think he wanted to go to Minnesota. Like, he could have stayed at Western Michigan another year. And I know that one of the points I've heard is he left Western Michigan because he also knew that was the best team he's going to have for at least another 2 seasons. So he jumped when he jumped. But now that he's got the resume up north, what team? Notre Dame? Is it Notre Dame that gets him? That's the only team I could think that he would willingly sign up for because it seems like maybe his speed. But I don't.
Does he want to stay in the Midwest? Does he want to maybe venture out? Pac-10 could be fun, or Pac-12.
See, PJ Fleck and USC.
Yeah.
Ooh. I actually love that. But can Trojans row a boat?
If they put the sword down, sure, that's fine.
What about with the sword? Does the horse and the Trojan come out in a canoe and just like cruise out to the 50-yard line to throw the sword in the ground?
They're going to need somebody because their ship is far out to sea now, sinking, taking on water. So
USC's is?
Yeah.
You know what? That is actually
That's
a
just
perfect
because
translation.
California is sinking into the sea. So
Yeah, that's a matter of location.
they're being weighed down by the pay to play rulings.
USC won a road game against Colorado. They probably shouldn't have needed to come back, but they did. And whoever inherits Keaton Slovis is in for a treat because he threw for 400-plus yards. He had 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. had 7 catches, 156 yards. Mostly that game was not really noteworthy except that it was USC's first win on the road, and they have Oregon coming up next. And they're hosting Oregon.
Oh, I still think Oregon gets them.
So after, and I'll kind of wedge these because I did want to kind of talk Oregon-Washington State. And I'll make a couple of notes. I don't know if either of you caught the game. But it was the 2 running backs, Washington State's Max Borghi and Oregon's CJ Verdell, that were the story of the game for me. And the other story was Washington State should have won this game by 10, but they dropped a touchdown. They dropped another touchdown that fumbled into an interception. They really ended up losing in that game. So I think Oregon's there for the picking, and we know that USC runs a very similar offense to Washington State. And for Oregon to kind of show the dents in their armor and then travel to USC, it's a really interesting matchup for me.
No, I think it's super interesting, but I still think that Oregon gets the better of them, just on the fact that Herbert's dynamic. He's going to be able to do it.
Herbert hits it like a switch, it feels like, because he'll have a spare game, a pretty spare game on you for 2-3 quarters, and then when it comes down to it, he's really good.
And then optic-wise, you're playing USC, who is what everybody associates the Pac-12 with anyways, Well, for better or for worse.
If USC wins, I think they still would be first place in the South. And if Oregon wins, they pretty much wrap up the North. And that's pretty interesting because an Oregon win opens the door for Utah-Oregon Pac-12 championship game.
It's happening.
God, I can't wait till we get our pick show because I'm going to change my mind 5 times between now and then.
Oh, good.
Let's take this home with a few notes. I'm just going to ping through here. Y'all stop me whenever you're ready, okay? Western Michigan hammered Bowling Green. And did you know, I guess you do because I immediately texted both of you afterwards, that Mike Alstott's son is the backup quarterback at Western Michigan.
Does he have the biggest shoulders of all time as a quarterback?
He looks big. He looks like Blake Bortles did in college. Like he's a solid man. And
that's a great comp. I'm sure that he's real happy that you just said that.
I'll tell you what, Blake Bortles at UCF was insanely good. I watched a lot of their games, and they were really, really, really. He was really great in college.
How did he forget how to throw a football?
I don't know. System, maybe. So his name's Griffin Alstott. He's a friend of the show now because he liked the tweet. But also since then, there's been 4 more Western Michigan players that have liked it. So being Syracuse's key victory this year, it seems kind of ironic.
Tim Lester.
It kind of seems kind of ironic that our number 1 fan base is the Western Michigan football team.
Hey, if they want to pay for us to go up to Kalamazoo,
please no. Don't even.
They can't. No, you know what? I'm here for it. Let's have Jeff. It's a homecoming for Jeff. I have family in Kalamazoo. Let's make it happen, Griffin Alstott.
Well, also they can put their statue up to me for our NCAA 14 season where I was the OC for Western Michigan, led them to great things.
You know what? I think I did that same save before too, and they were a lot of fun. They were because it was PJ Fleck's last season that it was that roster, and they were really good.
Yeah, but I was the OC, so it was fine. It was even better.
Penn State hammered Michigan State in the best Michigan State environment, the rain. Tight end Pat Freiermuth. Am I saying that right, Jeff?
Ugh.
About right.
All right. He was a star. 3 touchdowns. Arizona fired their defensive coordinator after they gave up 41 points to Stanford. TCU beat Texas, and Todd Orlando
Whoa. Who gives up 40 1 points to Stanford.
That would be defensive coordinator Marcel Yates, who was Rich Rodriguez's defensive coordinator. That someone thought, you know what, let's keep him and see what he's got, and he made it just a little over half the season. Another defensive coordinator who struggled was Todd Orlando, as TCU ran all over Texas. Really, Max Duggan had 273 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. He had 72 yards rushing, another rushing touchdown. Max Duggan, as he grows, as Max Duggan gets older, and Spencer Sanders with Oklahoma State gets older, Big 12 quarterbacks are going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for what that's going to look like.
I only want this to happen if he walks out of the locker room with a 2x4 over his shoulder.
Yeah, it's Maxaw Duggan.
Maxaw Duggan.
Damn it, yeah, Maxaw Duggan is the nickname, to go along with Jack the Snack Plumber.
Yep. They can fight each other in the summer. That'd be great.
Texas Tech lost to Kansas for the first time since 2001. Kyle, do you know how this game ends?
How?
Jeff, do you want to do the honors?
So I'll go ahead and explain it because I can't even do it justice.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's cool. It's a really difficult one. So the important thing to remember here is Texas Tech was winning, and Kansas drives the field, and they go to kick the go-ahead field goal. Right, the Mad Hatter's going to do it again. He couldn't hit it against Texas. Kansas is going to try to win this ball game, and Texas Tech blocks the field goal. The ball's spinning around. I can't tell you the Texas Tech defender who picked it up, but they picked the ball up and felt the need to return it. And as they start running left, about 5 yards horizontally across the field, they look back and decide to toss the ball in an effort to lateral and maybe do like a kick six situation.
Always smart.
Important note, Texas Tech was winning, and this would have ended the game. Instead, he laterals it to nobody, and a Kansas player jumps on it, and Kansas now has the ball back, and they kick the game-winning field goal to win.
Oh my god.
Just an absolute roller coaster of emotions for Jayhawks fans who have to be higher now than they have been since Todd Reesing, probably.
Well, now they're also looking at a reality where their basketball team is going to be throwing all kinds of like legal shit this year, so that'll be fun. They're having all kinds of fun with their emotions right now.
Les Miles just winced at the sign at the words "legal shit." Since they fired their offensive coordinator, the Jayhawks are averaging 43.5 points per game, which is almost a full 20 points better than their average across their first 5 games. That includes a loss to Coastal Carolina, where they only had 7 points.
Coastal Carolina is a traditional power, so
we have. I'm going to save the ACC Coastal note for the review show. I'm sorry, for the pick show. But I do want to say just 2 things before we get out of here. And if y'all have anything else, please feel free. UCLA beat ranked Arizona State. And Chip Kelly has now won 2 in a row. And his offense seems to be getting a hang of things. So they still have a chance to win the Pac-12 South, as crazy as that sounds.
Ew.
Also, this weekend was the first time since November 17th, 2007, that Kansas, Rutgers, Illinois, Indiana, and UConn all beat FBS teams on the same day.
Oh.
Rutgers scored 44 points. Thanks, Hugh Freeze.
Oh. Do they really want him to be their head coach now?
He's out of his hospital bed, Kyle. He's ready.
It's a quid pro quo. He's like, listen, I'll give you guys a win, but you've got to hire me. Please get me out of this place.
Hey, Liberty's going to go bowling.
I hate Lynchburg.
He says with like the automated like wheelchair voice system because it's how he's getting around now.
He's Piscataway dreaming right now. Said no one ever. No one wants to go to Piscataway. I
watched actually a pretty good amount of that game, and Liberty has a receiver that I can't remember his name, but he's really good. I don't know how Rutgers... I really don't know how Rutgers scored that many points because it didn't feel like they were in that much control other than just Liberty, I think, turning the ball over. Just looking
They hadn't hit their point allotment for the year. They needed to really make a dent into that.
Yeah, who would have guessed that Liberty would have gotten like 15 minutes over the course of this season on this show? And it not just all be Hugh Freeze's seats and the way he gets around the field.
Yeah, his sitting situation.
Jeff or Kyle, do y'all have any specific notes you want to talk about before we get out of here and say goodbye to our listeners?
No specific notes. Bye-bye.
I do just have a small piece of wisdom from our friend Chip Kelly. So he was asked about his team controlling their destiny in the South after they won, and his answer was, quote, "No, to be honest with you, grammatically, destiny is a predetermined set of events. Predetermined set of events, you can't control it. Think about that one," end quote.
Stand-up guy Chip Kelly.
Kelly's played 5 each with us. Let me tell you.
Chip Stradamus. All right, guys. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's week, and you'll have the pick show coming out from us on Wednesday. Say goodbye, everybody. Kyle, you say it again.
Bye.
Is Jeff just going to lay out again?
Seriously.
Hi, my name's Joshua Tracy.
And I am Corwin Heller.
And we are the hosts of a statistics and sports podcast called Juicing the Numbers.
We cover the NFL, college football, MLB, and the NHL with anything that we like to talk about in between.
If you like sports and the numbers behind it, come check out our show, Juicing the Numbers, on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find podcasts. Hit us up on Twitter at JuicingPod.